So, Royal High is going on a mass unfollowing spree. They also shared some updates regarding the new set and just some other stuff that's going to be coming to the game hopefully soon. And I want to talk to you guys about this primarily because there has been some mixed opinions about this, but I don't think it's all bad. And I actually am kind of happy that they are doing some of these things. Now, as many of you guys clocked yesterday, quickly before we get started, yes, my VTuber has changed a little bit. For those of you that are wondering, it's a customizable model, and I just kind of have been retexturing, purchasing different add-ons, and just kind of adjusting it as I go. I do have some more changes I'm going to be making to it, so this isn't the final thing yet, but getting straight into it, for those of you that don't know, Royal High recently put out this post about an hour ago talking about some really big changes on how they're going to be following creators in the Royal High Twitter community. Because if you guys don't know, right now Royal High actually follows quite a few different individuals, and for the most part, they aren't badge holders or developers. They're just people in the community that maybe they interact with a lot. And also, I do think it's important to note that Royal High has been following some creators for quite a while now. Some creators, including some problematic ones that you would consider, such as B Plays, Leah Ash, stuff like that. And so I do feel like this move is kind of presented in this way so that they could basically clear out their following list and keep tabs on who they're following a little bit closer, just because it is kind of insinuated that when a game follows a creator, it is insinuated that that game supports what that creator is doing. And so when you have creators allegedly going off and doing some not so great things, it definitely isn't a good idea to be following them. And so I do think obviously this choice is respectable. Now we're going to go ahead and read this post because they do also explain what the criteria is going to be for them following people in the future. And it reads, attention students, we'll be updating who we follow and we'll be keeping our follows to official badge holders, developers, and partners. Being followed by the official account will now be a special perk reserved for badge holders who proudly represent our community. Thank you all for your continued support. We appreciate you. Now, I did see some confusion from the community on what does partners mean, because they say badge holders, developers, people who work for the game, and then partners. And my assumption would be that partners would include things like the manufacturing companies they partner with, maybe retailers they partner with, people that they did collaborations with, such as, Dressed and Press, stuff like that, like games that they would collab with and stuff. And so that's what I think they mean by partners. Some people believe this meant that people who are maybe moderators for Royal High sub communities would then get, a follow back from the Royal High Valks, but I do not think that's what they're trying to say here. I think it's more so like a business kind of term, that people they conduct business with are the people they consider partners. Now, I have seen a lot of people basically getting a little bit sad in the comment section, being like, oh, well, it's really sad that Royal High's gonna unfollow me, like, I'm really quite upset. And I can understand that, and I can, obviously empathize with people to a degree, but also I do think something that's important to note is that some people take Royal High following them as basically a ticket that they can say whatever they want and there'll be no repercussions from the game because they follow them. And what I mean by that is that sometimes when you have a really large game following you and then you start maybe posting some controversial things, you start posting some stuff that maybe isn't the best, you start maybe bullying other people, harassing people, calling for people to be canceled, maybe you're just a little bit of a problematic Nelly, or you're typing things like these long essays and just being honestly kind of a shit disturber, right? Royal High obviously wouldn't want to associate with you because it's implied, and I think the major, understanding from community members is that if a big game follows you, it's because they agree with things that you've said. And unfortunately, although maybe a game might follow somebody back when they weren't being problematic, creators oftentimes become problematic with the intention of getting more views, going viral, getting attention. And unfortunately, when a large game follows that creator, it puts the game in a kind of tricky situation where it's like, yes, we followed you because you were being nice, but now you're kind of saying some things we don't agree with, and it's going to be kind of like a slippery slope for anybody regardless, because if the game unfollows them, I'm sure that creator would then make a huge statement about it. Oh my god, I was unfollowed and blah blah blah. But if they continue to follow them, then the game will continue to get harassment for quote unquote associating either directly or indirectly with the creator that players view as being problematic or toxic. And so I do think that it is like a good move for them to kind of be restricting who they're following, especially since some of the people that they're following right now who aren't badge holders are very problematic in the community. Obviously, I'm not naming names, and this is kind of just an opinionated statement, so I do need to clarify that, because being toxic or being problematic is something that's kind of based on your own personal opinion. But there are some creators that are continuously trying to cancel other creators, that are constantly like trash talking other YouTubers, who are trash talking developers. And it's okay to share your criticism, but it's another thing to incite hate and violence towards somebody because you don't like them. And so I am hopeful that with this move, obviously Royal High will kind of limit who they're following. And I do think it's respectable to just be following badge holders. I see some people trying to use the language that, oh, you're trying to like hold it over a head and have like this badge thing be like this really important thing and that nobody else can deserve it. which I don't agree with that sentiment. I think this is mainly something to protect brand image, and I think it's a game's right to decide who they do and do not follow. And I definitely do think that a game, especially a game like Royale, where they have such a large community, they shouldn't feel obligated to follow absolutely everybody under the sun who supports them. Would it be nice? Sure, but at the same time, a game, again, following somebody does kind of create potential tension in the future if that creator that they follow starts being problematic. And so I think for them to keep tabs on like the kind of people they're interacting with or collaborating with, or they're kind of not directly but indirectly representing or boosting because they are following them, and when people view the profile they'll see who they're following, I think it's 100% within their right to only follow creators that are in their program, because that means that they've thoroughly vetted these creators, they agree with the statements that these creators make, and then obviously if a creator is being problematic, they're causing issues, they get kicked out of the program and then subsequently get unfollowed. The whole unfollowing thing on Twitter especially seems to be such a personal thing for some people, like, oh my god, this person unfollowed me. And I definitely think that this will kind of ease the tension a little bit when they do unfollow people, because it's not about like a game liking or not liking you, it's strictly about business and business relationships. And I do think it's important that they're obviously setting boundaries, because I do think some people can have developed, I guess, a parasocial relationship specifically with the community manager because of how friendly they can be at times and playful, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do think this is a good step towards kind of like putting a barrier between these weird social connections that some people have developed with somebody who is simply running a game social media account. Now, aside from that, they also made another post where they basically talked about the current status of the set. They write, a quick update on the new set. The only piece left to fix is the short skirt. This doesn't give us a set timeline just yet, since formatting can be the most time-consuming part of the process, and then there will be a final review by Barbie before release. They go on to say, we had a meeting with The Economist this morning. The Q&A will be shared before the update, and we're still working on things behind the scenes. So, there is also a little section after this, but for the set, I think it's really awesome that they share this information, and I also appreciate how they haven't set a release date. I've seen some people saying, oh, well, that's not fair, you're not setting a release date. Babe, you can't demand that a game is transparent with you and then get upset when they're transparent and stuff doesn't go to plan. You know what I mean? Like, there is a balance to be had here, and I think one of the biggest criticisms that they receive is that, hey, don't announce stuff if it's not set in stone yet. And so I do appreciate that they're obviously taking that into consideration and not setting a specific date. I understand some players are frustrated since it's been almost a full month since this was announced in the first place. The first image came out on January 10th. And so I can understand a bit of the frustration, but at the same time, I would much rather a game shares development details and doesn't give a timeline if they don't know 100% if they can keep that timeline. And so I respect this. I don't think it's bad that they didn't give a timeline. I don't care. As long as you're not giving false promises, I could not care less. Now, the other part too is the Q&A, which if you guys don't know, Royale has basically already chosen people for their Q&A. If you go to the original post where they announce the economic rework of the game and how they're going to be kind of changing stuff within the gameplay itself, they had people commenting questions down below, and they responded to any questions they're going to be addressing in the Q&A by responding selected for Q&A. So if you guys are curious what exact questions will be addressed, you can scroll down to that post and see them. I was going to read them in this video, but I just thought that might be a little bit too long, so you guys can go take a look at them. A lot of them are just about like the rarity system, how trading's going to work, if there's any other updates planned, stuff like that. So pretty generic. And then aside from that, they also say, the pool will be coming soon. We passed along your feedback about wanting to see the items first, so the devs are working on adding them to the game so a preview can be released alongside the pool. Which, I love this. You know, I'm not typically somebody to hype real high up, not necessarily tear them down either, but I am pretty critical. But I really do appreciate that they've obviously taken community feedback into consideration with this update, and that they're actually understanding that, hey, in order for us to make an informed decision about whether or not we want the item to be tradable, it is important that we know what we're even voting on. And so I can appreciate that they took that feedback into consideration, and that is going to be part of like the polling process, because I was a little bit surprised to see the poll wasn't out yet, but this then kind of explains it to me why it hasn't been released yet, because they are still kind of working on the items and adding the items to the game so that players can then decide if they will be tradable or not. So regardless, I want to know your guys' thoughts on this down below. Firstly, I really appreciate that they're trying to communicate and doing their best to communicate without, you know, setting unrealistic timelines, so I can really respect that. And on top of that, I don't think the mass unfollowing thing is going to be a bad thing. I understand, obviously, I have a different perspective of somebody who is never followed by them, so it doesn't really matter to me. But I also understand there are a lot of creators that unfortunately just don't have the reach to be in a badge program, and so it is unfortunate that they're going to be getting unfollowed. But at the same time, I understand for like brand safety, you know, the way that your brand is perceived, and also just like community interactions in general, it would be important to obviously fully screen people before you're following them, especially since Royale has been following some creators for several years at this point. And so I do think it's obviously an important thing that they are able to screen people, unfollow, and follow people according to like their set standards. So that's the right as a game. I don't have a problem with that. But let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!